Hi there. 6 is for sex.
Girl 6.
Girl 6 is about an inspiring actress disappointed by her treatment in the movie industry. To see the ins and outs of a black actress trying to make it in New York City is so interesting to me. To pay her bills, Judy, who throughout the movie is known as Girl 6, gets a job as a phone sex operator, and I love this premise. It's engaging, and I think there was so much that could have been explored, but for some reason, it wasn't. Before I dive into what were the biggest issues in the movie, I want to start off with the highlights. This soundtrack only features either songs by Prince or artists related to Prince, like the new Power Generation, The Family, and Vanity 6. Honestly, the soundtrack was one of the best things about this movie. I mean, it's literally Prince. What would have made it even better is Prince giving a cameo like the 50 other cameos, which actually brings me to... The use of cameos in this movie was kind of confusing. I do like how meta it was for certain people to play themselves like Halle Berry, Tarantino, and Ron Silver, but the rest weren't really needed. Madonna's character was introduced as one of the bosses who interviewed Judy on her job hunt. Outside of giving us looks, her playing this character wasn't needed. The same can be said about Naomi Campbell. Even though I enjoy it and think it's so funny to hear Naomi talk like this.
Hello, this is Mistress Marlene. I heard you've been a naughty boy. Now pull down your pants and bend over my knees. You're going to get spanked. Yes, one spank for touching my panties.
She wasn't needed. If you were to replace these two characters with anybody, and I mean any actress, the story would have remained the same. I can't say for sure, but I felt like all these celebrities were included in the movie just to get more people to come and see it opposed to a creative choice. I guess what I'm saying is, if you're gonna have Madonna and Naomi in your movie, really use their talents. It was clear that the main character Judy loved Dorothy Dandridge, so it makes sense why she would imagine being in a movie scene from Carmen Jones. But including movies like Foxy Brown and shows like Good Times / The Jefferson makes absolutely no sense. When these random scenes were shown, it had no correlation to the plot. I guess it could be when Judy puts on a specific wig, a certain character comes out, and we see that playing out in her mind. Don't get me wrong, I do find this an interesting way to show how her creative mind works, but it has to either help move the character or plot forward, and it did neither. I'm pretty sure Halle Berry making a cameo while also highlighting Dorothy Dandridge throughout the whole movie was intentional. Since Girl 6 was released in 1996, maybe Spike Lee wanted to include Dorothy and Halle to shine even more light onto the upcoming biopic that was released in 1999. This might be a coincidence or a reach, but it's something that I noticed. Also like how Judy was doing the same monologue Nola Darling said at the beginning of She's Gotta Have It, because I can see the similarities between the two characters.
The only reason I've consented to doing this is because I wish to clear my name. Not that I care what people think, but enough is enough.
I want you to know the only reason I'm consenting to this is because I wish to clear my name. Not that I care what people think, but enough is enough.
Even though I don't always agree with Spike Lee's story and plotline choices, one thing that is always done to perfection is the cinematography. Shot after shot after shot looked as pretty as a picture. Of course, he included his signature gliding shot, and I have to say that this is one of the most useful uses of the shot. After taking the second job as a phone sex operator, watching Judy spiral due to stress, work, and her ex-boyfriend was shown perfectly in this shot. The chaos and confusion was executed perfectly with the red, green, and blue lighting, insinuating her greed, depression, and the caller's anger. The short, rapid cuts also created confusion and chaos. You can tell she lost herself and her sense of reality. Also, Spike Lee makes a big deal in his press notes about how all of the male callers in Girl 6 are photographed in high definition video, which is then transferred to film, while Girl 6, the main character, is photographed in 35mm film. The overall effect is one of diminishing each man's power, while the 35mm look and texture of the woman's heightens their strength. I also feel like the graininess of the camera while showing the male characters creates this distance and mysteriousness between her and the callers. This is why Spike Lee is one of the best directors of all time. But now it's time to talk about the worst parts of Girl 6. The movie's worst problem was creating these subplots that go nowhere and make no sense. One of the main dynamics that showed throughout the movie was Judy's relationship to her ex-boyfriend, who literally has no name. He's a kleptomaniac, and when he and Judy were together, he was a terrible boyfriend. We spend 30 minutes throughout the whole film focusing on their relationship and still absolutely know nothing. She runs into him on the street, they go out to eat, have an unpleasant walk together.
What do you think you're doing? Don't you put my hands down your pants? What's wrong with you?
What do you expect talking to me like that?
And he shows up at her house with roses, and it's all for nothing. Their dinner date didn't even give us any insight as to what happened between them, how it affects Judy, or how she feels about him in the current moment. What makes this storyline even more frustrating is that at the end of the movie, they have their goodbye conversation and have this dramatic kiss, and as a viewer, I'm like, I don't care. That's one thing about writing good characters. You have to make the audience care. Whether that be I care if they make it as a couple, or I hope they remain apart. But I ended up feeling indifferent. Watching that closing scene, I was so confused because I didn't know that I was supposed to care about their relationship. Throughout the whole movie, this plot was an afterthought, and it shows. While she's dealing with working so many hours, she starts to like one of her callers and agrees to meet him. This plot was actually interesting to me, so of course, as I'm waiting to see what's going to happen, when they finally meet, he ghosts her. Pause for a second. Now, when I say when they finally met, he ghosts her, I say that because nothing in this movie was made clear. I don't know if that's the actual guy because most of his face was hidden in the entire movie, or that guy just didn't show up and that's just a random walking by. I also don't know if this is her cousin or just her friend, if this is actually her ex-husband or her ex-boyfriend. Different articles are saying different things, so I have no idea which is which. But back to what I was saying. Okay, that's fine. But I'm waiting to see how this affects her. It really doesn't, or at least we don't see it that much. We see her at Coney Island by herself, we see her look disappointed, and that's it. This whole situation disappears by the next scene and is never brought up or mentioned again. There's also these B stories where a store owner flirts with her, but in the next scene we see he has a wife, and then there's another B story where a little girl falls down the elevator but she survives.
It all started in this hallway, at this door, that the girls' game of tag led to tragedy. Witnesses are telling us that 8-year-old Angela King was running down the 6th floor hallway when she leaned against this elevator door. The elevator, however, was not on the 6th floor. In fact, it was up on the 18th floor, and that elevator door should have been secure. It was not. It gave way, and 8-year-old Angela King fell through the empty elevator shaft, falling 6 floors down into the basement.
I guess the little girl is supposed to be Judy's psyche spiraling down, like how the girl fell down the elevator shaft, but who knows. With the elevator plot, I thought that maybe he was trying to highlight a true story that happened around that time, but I couldn't find anything, so I guess it's just her psyche. Even if it was supposed to represent her psyche, there are so many other ways that could have been shown. Hell, he could have used those Carmen Jones and Foxy Brown moments to showcase her thoughts and emotions at that time. When Judy is first introduced, viewers see that she's an aspiring actress. She's shown as the strong and persevering character, and we see that during her audition. When Tarantino asks her to take off her shirt in an audition, she reluctantly does so, but soon pulls her shirt back up because it's clear that she's uncomfortable. After leaving the audition, she expresses to her agent that she's not comfortable with that, but each and every turn, people are telling her to grow up and get over it. Not only is she trying to pursue her career, but she's also working way too many jobs to support herself. She works as a movie extra, a coat check girl, and eventually a phone sex operator. One thing they make clear is that she's serious about her passions and her craft. She pays for acting courses with the legendary Susan Batson.
The only reason...
The only reason. The only reason. The only reason!
Look,
Look, nothing!
I went to an interview, big Hollywood interview, and
Yeah.
this asshole tells me to take off my shirt.
So what? So what? Grow up! Grow up now!
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about you growing up.
I'm talking you to put you facing the reality of this business.
Which is?
Which is taking off your top, baby.
That has nothing to do with the work. You've taught me about the work.
It has plenty to do with the work. That's the business, honey bunch. Make it up.
Which her performance was so weird, but of course working as a phone sex operator will only help her craft. She'll get to play different characters, learn improvisation, character building, and we'll see an improvement in her craft, right? Right? Wrong. While working as an operator, she's shown to be the best caller with the most clients, and all the other women are impressed with her skills. This is my favorite part about the movie. I like to see the diversity of the women and them supporting each other. Their boss is supportive and understanding to them, and I love seeing that dynamic because usually in movies and shows, they often portray women bosses as ruthless and cold. Honestly, that concept would have been a great movie and even a better show, but that's not where this movie went. At the end of the movie, viewers end up right back at the beginning of the movie. While she's auditioning in LA for another white director, Ron Silver, he asks her to take off her top, but this time she refuses, and it's like, yeah, you go girl. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy she finally stood up for herself and stood her ground. She's not comfortable doing a topless scene, so I'm glad she shut that down. You see, watching her refuse to go nude in the audition doesn't feel earned after watching the movie. Not a single thing that has happened to her in the entire film shows what would push her character to make this change. Because I don't remember a specific moment where she stood up for herself and stood her ground on something. The issue is that viewers never got to know Judy, and we didn't get to see when or why that switch happened. She just makes those changes and it's never really shown or explained why or how. What pushes her to make the change to stand her ground and say, no, I won't go nude? That was never shown. The way Judy was written was very shallow and surface. As a viewer, we never got to know who she truly was. Hell, it took till the last 5 minutes of the movie to know her real name. I do think the name part was intentional, but doing that removed the humanization of her character and made her just a number. She was more than her job. The craziest part about this movie is that it was written by a woman, Susan Lori Parks, a Pulitzer Award-winning writer who wrote this, and this. So I'm just confused. The fact that someone so credible wrote Girl 6 from an extreme male gaze is just so disappointing. To explain what I mean when I say male gaze, here's a clip from Siskel and Ebert to discuss it further.
Seeing the scenes with a lecherous director and so forth.
Oh, that's bad
Another
stuff.
thing, this movie is allegedly told from the female point of view. I think it's really from a male point of view, and I'll tell you why. There's a scene in the movie where she goes to meet a client that she talked to on the phone, and she's going to go out with him on a date. I think that's what the clients would like the girls to do. I don't think that's very often what the girls do.
Her only being called by Girl 6 is rooted in the male gaze because it puts us in the caller's position. They know her by her number and that's it. They didn't know anything deeper about her and neither did the viewer. The topless scene in her being blamed for not wanting to take off her clothes in the auditions, her meeting up with one of her callers, and so many other moments from the movie are from the male gaze. Even though the story choices and the lack of character development was Park's fault, Spike Lee messed up right from the beginning. This Roger Ebert article explains this perfectly. Now, if Lee is saying Tarantino is a cretin for making her do this, then logically he wouldn't let us see her breasts, even if Tarantino can. But he does. What we have here is a scene about a woman being shamed by exposing herself, and the scene is handled so that she exposes herself. That puts Lee in the same boat with the lecture. Spike Lee is trying to condemn Tarantino's character for doing exactly what he just did in the actual scene. This scene could have easily not exposed her breasts and viewers would still have got the message loud and clear. This is not the first time that Spike Lee has been called out for treating female actresses like this. The Root wrote an article titled Spike Lee's Women Problem and hits the nail right on the head. I really think everyone should check it out because they discuss other female actors and characters, but for this video, I'm only going to focus on what was said about Girl 6. Spike Lee's wife, Tanya Lewis Lee, criticized the development of female characters in Girl 6. It was like dress up a lot of pretty, sexy girls and make them talk dirty. And that quote was essentially what this movie was. The main character Judy had no depth. There was no character arc and most of the plot lines fell flat and went nowhere. Another thing I noticed was that the notion that a woman who owns her sexuality eventually needs to learn a cruel lesson. Judy, who enjoys the easy fast money of being a phone operator, gets punished by a caller when he figures out where she lives and threatens her life. To make up for the terrible way she makes her money, she gives some of it to the little girl who fell down the elevator. I guess this is the moment she redeems herself for being such a terrible, terrible person. This message feels almost identical to what happened to Nola Darling. For those of you who don't know or remember, in Spike Lee's directorial debut, She's Gotta Have It, when Nola refuses to commit to her 3 suitors, one of them, Jamie, sexually assaults her. The rest of the movie brushes it off like it really didn't happen. What happened to Nola seems like a form of punishment for her sexual liberation. It's saying, see what happens when you own your sexuality. I do agree that there's totally different levels to it, but the same treatment was given to Judy. Even though I can admit that Judy was becoming too intertwined with her job, the fact that her character had to be punished for her career choices was wrong. If anyone is interested in reading the articles I mentioned, they are located in the description below. Also, since I don't have enough followers yet to make a poll, please let me know by liking the comments on which video you would like to see next. The options are Double in a Blue Dress and the formula for a noir film.
Just to make some money. I first came out to Los Angeles when I got home from the war in Europe.
Love and Basketball, the movie we love and hate.
I'll play you.
What?
1 game, 1-on-1.
For what?
Your heart.
Or I May Destroy You deserves an Emmy.
Son of a king! Get away from it.
Thank you for watching. Bye.
I'm living in a fantasy, my own little nasty world.